Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents, and welcome to the 2021 Summer Vacation Series. We're getting to know comics from around the world and those who performed on our Isolation Comedy online show in 2020. I'm your host, Valerie, and my sometime co-host, Ms. Purrington. She'll show up if she wants to. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about mostly Austin comedy. And you can keep up with us on Twitter and Instagram at Comedy Wham, or you can follow us on our Comedy Wham Facebook page. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, live shows, and an events page for live shows in Austin and Houston. If you're a comic in those cities and want your show featured on the calendar, go to the events page and click Submit a Show to complete the short survey. Now let's get back to our podcast. Launched in 2016, the podcast project brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and will usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the global comedy scene one of the best in the world. That does not translate very well from Austin to globe. Oh well. Well, if you like this podcast, please rate and review us. Now, today we are talking to the founder and producer of I Laugh KL. They have performed at live and virtual comedy festivals around the world, from their own home in Kuala Lumpur to Plano, Texas, to England, to Washington, D.C. They may be our very first spoken word poet guest on the podcast. And they have written, directed, and produced Walking on Spectrum, a 1-hour medley show, and that show premiered at Adelaide Fringe 2020 in Australia, Virtual Fringe 2020 in Auckland, New Zealand, and Rochester Fringe Festival in 2020 out of New York. They are one of our favorite comics from our 2020 Isolation Comedy show. In fact, what I really liked about them is their ability to relate their own experiences living in Kuala Lumpur to audiences in the United States. It's a particular knack that I observed about their comedy. And now Comedy Wham presents our guest, Juliana Heng.
Hi, Valerie.
Hello, welcome.
Yeah.
So, Juliana, you are in Kuala Lumpur. That is your home.
Yes.
And we had to work through the time difference in order to find a good time.
Yeah.
But it is really, really cool that this whole concept of doing comedy online has, given me the opportunity to meet you, but also given me the opportunity to have you on my podcast to get to know you a little bit more. And I actually have an icebreaker question. So let's start with that. And then we'll get into your background as a comic, a poet, and now I guess a film producer, technically, right? All right, my icebreaker question is one word to describe your past.
Boring.
I find that hard to believe, actually.
Yeah. It's like Homer Simpson, that boring. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You were so good. I was watching another clip of yours today, and what I was watching was your set from the Plano Virtual Festival.
Yes.
And
also in Texas.
Yeah, exactly. And I loved, I was reminded, because you did this on our show when you did a set with us, you brought in something that related your experience in Kuala Lumpur to, like specific things. Like you made a comment about, something that happens in Kuala Lumpur, it's like something that would happen in Detroit. And I'm like, that is very well researched. Or maybe you just took a pen and you said, I'll just name any city in the US. Obviously, I have no idea what the comedy scene is in Malaysia. So why don't you paint us a picture of what the comedy scene, or you know, what is stand-up like in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia?
Sure. I would say that Kuala Lumpur is actually, or Malaysia as a whole, is a growing scene where people, we are still in the midst of educating people what stand-up comedy is. Because people, like, for example, in Malaysia, we have, in the before times, we have entertainment like cinema, comedy, and then theater, and a few others, maybe like karaoke or anything else. But the thing is, stand-up is never the thing where people will want to like go. But cinema is pretty automatic. So I mean, we are trying to work towards a direction where cinema, where comedy will become something like, hey, let's go to the cinema. You know, we want it to be that common. So in Malaysia, we are at a point where we are still growing and we are still figuring things out. But I'm kind of lucky because I have more seniors who are already figured things out for us. We just need to just follow through, and we have someone who we can talk to for guidance. Yeah, we are not at a phase where it's too early to do anything. We are already established, because I think Malaysian stand-up scene is already like, I think 15 years, I mean, as a whole, 15 years old. But there are two pioneers, both men and women. I mean, they are the queen of comedy and the godfather of comedy in Malaysia. Both of them have an experience of 30 years. Yeah. But the time the scene is not even there, they are performing themselves, and they are fighting themselves out. There's no comedy club, no open mic for trainings whatsoever that time. But I think those who are age 15, they actually have a scene. They actually build a scene together. And that's the scene that we know today. And we are the younger ones, like I'm in for about 3 years. So 3 years is actually, we are like kind of like baby only. I mean, compared to the 30 years old. So the thing is, we are learning, but we already have a platform where we can actually perform. There's no such thing like, oh no, I don't know what to do. You know, I don't know how to get started. Our time, we say, we do know how to get started. Yeah.
So how long have you been doing comedy?
3 years.
3 years. Oh, you are a baby.
Yeah, I am a baby. Yeah.
How do you get oh, for those of you, since this isn't released by video, but Juliana just did really cute little hand gestures. What sparked the fire in you to pursue stand-up?
It was quite interesting. I mean, how I started comedy was, I think it was a seed planted long ago, actually, by my boss. I used to work as an auditor, actually. So yeah, so that time we were so busy because as an auditor during the peak period, you don't even see the daylight. Your nose is always on the laptop, you know. So the thing is, I was like, we are so busy, but our boss decided to like reward us in the off-peak season. So he bought us tickets to the Mas Jobrani comedy show. So happened Mas Jobrani came to Malaysia. Yeah. So we watched, and then, I mean, it's great. He's really good and all, just that it just didn't click. The next day I went back to work as usual. Yeah, I just, good, very good. And then the next day I went back to work, didn't click. And then after that, I think that was 2011 when Mas Jobrani come to Malaysia. Okay. And second time was 2014, where me and a few group of Toastmasters, we wanted to check out a comedy club. So it was nearby our workplace. I mean, that's like kind of like the one and only comedy club in Malaysia that time. So that time we went to watch that, but that time it wasn't even stand-up, it's improv comedy. Yeah. So it was improv comedy where they do scenes in the head, you know, those kind of stuff. It was funny. I enjoyed myself and all, and managed to talk to a few local comedians. But still, the next day I went back to work. So it still didn't click. Yeah. And then I think it finally only clicked when I actually saw this flyer, I think. But that time I was struggling tremendously at work, where I started hating my job. That's the thing, because the first two encounter, I'm pretty neutral. My attitude about work is pretty neutral. So I just went back to work. But this time, I'm like, oh no, I mean, I'm in trouble. I just find my work quite boring and meaningless, and I just need more. And that time, I saw a flyer at the train station. Yeah. And the flyer was like, it was multicolored, because it's actually from a mall, actually. So it's all multicolored, but there's this very particular ugly page where it's only orange color. And they said, stand-up comedy, newbies welcome. And that's when I'm like, okay, so email, something at gmail.com, then I'm like, okay. Then after that, I say, yeah, can I do stand-up comedy? I would like to try out, But the thing is, the real reason behind this is because I wanted to enter for free. How do I enter for free? Because I don't want to enter with a door fee. So the thing is, I say, okay, what do I do, And then they say, oh, you just need to do 3 minutes. I'm like, yeah, splendid. I can talk for 3 hours if I want to, Yeah. So went up there and then I performed. But I mean, as a first timer, you don't expect to kill. I mean, even if I kill, it's because of the generosity of the first time audience when the host announced, oh, this person is taking the stage for the first time.
Yeah.
I think whatever you say, the audience will just clap and laugh anyway. So that is not a true indicator. You should have booed me. I will never come back to stand up again. But that time they were like cheering and all. And my father was the one who accompanied me that time, and he videoed it actually. So okay, so guess where the laugh track come from?
Your dad. That's sweet.
So yeah, so the thing is, I was like, yes, I have it. Let's do stand-up comedy. Yeah. But the other reason I decided to do stand-up comedy is because I'm someone who is pretty lonely. I mean, not just because of my circumstances. It's just I'm pretty lonely as a person, where I'm quite comfortable being my own usually. Just that I do notice the power of connection when I was doing stand-up comedy, because when I see a group of strangers, because the audience are all strangers. They all come from different walks of life, and they only meet each other in the comedy club. And that's all. And they usually hang out with their troop of friends. And the comics themselves, again, they are a bunch of loners. Yeah. So everyone is just like a whole building of strangers together. But the moment someone tell a joke and the audience laugh, by the end of the open mic or even the comedy show, they become friends, So, and I decided that, yeah, I need friends, So that's when I decided to start doing stand-up comedy. And 3 years later, I'm glad to say that I have many friends. Three. Only. Yeah.
Stop.
Yes, but it's still good. Yeah, because it's 100% improvement from a 0. Yeah.
I'm already loving this conversation, because you hit on things that, if anybody's wondering, well, are the universal themes of comedy, no matter where it is happening, and you've hit on them. The fact that the first time, if somebody is introduced as this is the first time they've come up on a stage, the audiences are going to be a lot more generous with them. And also the whole concept that a lot of comics are lonely people. Don't come at me for saying that, but we have some loneliness in our hearts, but once we get up on that stage and we make a connection with either other comics or with the audience through laughter, then you've got friendship now. So that's really cool to kind of hear that certain things are the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is your start, and I think if you've been in comedy for 3 years, that means about a year, going on a year and a half of it has been online.
Yep.
But maybe for you that hasn't mattered as much, because if Kuala Lumpur is a place that doesn't have a lot of comedy offerings, maybe you had the advantage on us because you were seeking out other ways of performing comedy online already. Is that a fair statement?
It is, because especially now because Malaysia, especially this point of time, we are having a hike in COVID cases. Suddenly there is increase, and we are going into a total lockdown, which the last time we had was last year, March to June. So it's 3 months ago last year, and we are bringing back the total lockdown this year again. So that can be very devastating, especially for comedians who are, especially we are growing and all. We already don't have much stage time, and now the stage is being pulled out under our, like a rug from under our feet. Yeah. So the thing is, a lot of us, we are suffering at an early phase. Of course, we do suffer from withdrawal symptom, because we are like, I need to get back to the stage, Yeah. But the good thing is we found a Zoom comedy, and the thing about Zoom comedy is all you need to do is to just log on the laptop at the right time. It's like it's like location is no longer, because the thing is for us, I mean, I have considered touring as well, but there is a lot of money that I don't have yet, like to go around. Even in Southeast Asia, if I were to tour, for example, just the Southeast Asia region, like Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, I also need money to actually go around. And unfortunately, in Malaysia, where the arts are still pretty, I mean, we are pretty underground, and it's not really easy to make money unless you are a mainstream TV star. It is pretty hard for us unless you have a day job. But again, there is a dichotomy in this, where when you have a day job, you can't just go and tour anytime you like, because you have an obligation. But for people like us who just want to do comedy full time, not even in income wise, just the heart. So we also need money. But the thing is, with Zoom comedy, the barrier of entry becomes very low. That means you don't need to really like fork out your flight tickets, your accommodation. And I think accommodation is the biggest killer. Of anywhere else in the world. It's the accommodation and the travel, the transport. So the thing is, just buy the laptop, and I think the only thing we need to invest is the internet connection, because in the early phase I did not, and I suffered a lot of like, suddenly I was talking and people can't hear me. The internet just cut the audio, or suddenly the whole thing, the video lag, everything. So, and the laptop give way, because it was a lousy office work laptop. So eventually these are things that I have to invest eventually, but the cost is considerably lower than flying out there.
Right. Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Tell me about what kinds of comedy opportunities you were having right before everything shut down last March. How often are you able to be on stage before COVID?
I would say for a week, maybe. I mean, if I hustled hard, it would be 3 to 5 times. I mean, because there are different. Okay, there are 2 comedy clubs in Malaysia, but there are a few independent show producers who run their own open mics. And if let's say I'm like in the mood to do everything, it will be 3 to 5 times. And it is great. And the time I was already starting to travel for comedy contests, like around the regional, like 2019 is kind of like the year of traveling for me, where I travel and do comedy. So it started off with the various states of Malaysia, because I'm from the central part. But I went to the northern part. There is a scene in northern Malaysia as well. And there's also a scene in the eastern side. So eastern, where Malaysia is a quirky country, we are being split. The east and west are being split by kind of like, not the wall of Berlin, right? Not the Berlin Wall, but by the South China Sea. Yes, we are permanently split by that. Okay. So to be able to travel to the east side of Malaysia, we have to fly or take a boat that lasts quite a long time. So normally we'll just take the flight there. The thing is, they all have their scenes there. And the time I was already traveling regionally in Malaysia itself. And after that, I went down to Singapore. Singapore is our neighboring country, just down south, in 400 kilometers down south. We just need to cross a bridge and we are in Singapore. And after that, I also fly to Bangkok. Yeah, Bangkok is actually Thailand, also another neighboring country, for a comedy contest that time. And it was awesome. I mean, I actually had fun that time, because you know what's a fun thing about traveling while doing comedy? I don't need to drive, so I boost. In Malaysia, I have to drive, so I hardly boost. And then there are times I actually told my other friends, you know why? I actually find that I'm funnier overseas. And they were like, because you drink. That's why you're funnier out there. It's like in Malaysia, you tend to be uptight because you tend to be bogged down by responsibilities, by work, and also by the traffic rules. So you can't drink much. Sure. And finally, I make my way to the UK, United Kingdom, London, and I also played a few states that time. Just go there and travel, and at the same time perform comedy. And that time I was already like, yes, I'm going to travel for comedy. 2020 is my year. I'm going to plan a Southeast Asian tour. And that's when the lockdown happened.
So I'm curious, and you could just blame the dumb American question here. What language are you performing in predominantly?
Predominantly, I perform in English, because that's how the scene started off as well. The scene is in English mainly, but eventually they branch out to our national language, which is Bahasa Melayu, Malay. I mean, in English terms. And I think Mandarin is pretty primitive. That means it's like it tried to start, but it didn't have the traction. So eventually the comedy producer just say, okay, I think I better take a hike because I cannot be wasting money every time on venues where only end up all comedians coming, no audience. And it's pretty hard. I mean, I know that there is a Chinese scene, it's just that we are also focused on building our basics first. Because I think that's a valid thing to do, like build on your basics first before you even venture out. Because when you venture too much, and then especially it gives you heartache, I think it's worth to take a rain check rather than to keep going in and continue to feel hurt, yeah, that kind of stuff. So so I think if let's say it didn't work out, I mean, just fall back on stand-up, on the craft of stand-up itself. Yeah. So I think the most traction, but Malay has been gaining traction to the point that most of the TV shows in Malaysia are, of course, in the national language because, of course, from the media point of view and producer point of view, if they want to do an English one, they might as well just buy it from the other countries, like who are already more established with producing works in English. So only Malay will be the one that is produced by the home. And I think even for myself, when I'm performing in Malay, I can only perform in Malaysia. I can't perform it in elsewhere. So I kind of think it is a good direction to kind of hone my Malay act in Malaysia itself, and then with the option open now where I can actually work my English sets elsewhere, like in US, UK. So I think it opens up a new world for me. Yeah, where I can actually focus on branch out. And because I actually forced myself to branch out to Malay because it is a comedy competition that is akin to the stand-up, what they call it, NBC have this stand-up show where they call it Bring the Fun. The one is Bring the Funny is by NBC Bring the Funny, and then Last Comic Standing. Yeah, Last Comic Standing.
Yeah.
I was thinking as well, like I'm confused between both. So Malaysia have that, and but the only snack is the audition is in Malay, and my act is mainly in English. So I actually have to like translate it and rehearse it in a very short period of time. In fact, when I was on the TV show that time, I have performed less than 10 times in my national language because, okay, although we grow up learning that language, but when you left school, you will fall back into your default language. You don't like keep using your national language unless it's for official purpose. So that's the thing that I'm having, where I speak English most of the time. Even Mandarin, I also hardly speak unless I meet a friend who only speaks Mandarin. Then I will literally use all my quota to speak to that person in Mandarin, and I will be like, no more Chinese words. I already exhausted my quota with this person. So that's how I kind of like force myself to quickly relearn the language. And I mean, eventually I do get comfortable with it during the shooting and all. It was not too bad actually to regain that language capability back. Yeah, but it was a bit tough when you're like, oh no, I mean, I'm going to audition in the language. I'm like, what if the jokes didn't translate well? That is what we are afraid of. But a joke, if let's say the universal idea is actually funny, ideally it should work in any language. Yeah, even if I do it in Mandarin, it should work. In Malay, it should work. Just that you need to do a bit of tweaking to let people understand it more. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. So did you jump on the online show idea right away?
I do because the thing is I was kind of like having a bit of a withdrawal syndrome that time, and it is a good thing. It's like, if let's say I don't have the withdrawal symptom, I'll be like, no, it doesn't make sense. But the thing is, I do, so I was like, anything goes. And the first virtual mic I actually jumped on, it's not even a comedy mic, it's actually a poetry and music mic in Manila, Philippines. So that time they were like, oh, okay, but you can do anything you want. But I'm also a poet, so that time naturally I just pull out my book of poetry, my own poetry, and just read there. But it opens my mind that it is possible to perform online, because at first we are like, how do we perform online? It doesn't make sense, and all. But eventually I felt like, hey, it is possible. And then I was in a UK collective group for Facebook. It's a Facebook group. And because that time last year, 2019, I was in the UK, so I actually joined the forum to get in touch with the gigs. That means anytime when someone say, oh, we have people pulling out, can who wants spot? And then I was like, me, and then I would just take the train there. And that forum actually, they say that, okay, we are going to have a virtual comedy show, And I was like, sure. I mean, I say I would like to try out. I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm just say let's go and try it out. And I think it is not too bad, because when I try my jokes, although it has a very unusual dynamics because of the delay and all, where because of the internet line and also whatever that's happening in Zoom, it is like it's not immediate. There is a bit of a couple of milliseconds delay here and there. But apart from that, I think the performance are almost similar to live. Yeah. But again, for me, it's because I am on the spectrum. So I think I embrace virtual a bit more readily because I would be frank, performing in front of a camera and performing in front of an audience is kind of the same for me because I'm unable to read audience. Like I look at audience, I have to assume that they are the best audience in the entire world. You know, I have to assume that because I can't tell. I mean, if let's say they are having a bad day or what, I also can't tell. So to me, it's kind of like I don't really see any difference, and my work doesn't involve a lot of crowd work, so I don't really see a big difference in the jump. But for comedians who do a lot of crowd work or they rely on a lot of audience energy, that's when the Zoom will be like it's a world apart. But for me, I don't rely a lot on the audience. Apart from laughter and applause, I don't really rely much on interactions. And also, I can't read audience. I mean, put me in a dark room, I'm also fine. You know, like blindfold me, I'm also fine. Because to me, it's I just like, okay, I have jokes, you know, and I will just do it, you know. Yeah. So I think that is the boon of maybe that being on the spectrum. Maybe it's like I embrace it much more readily than a lot of other people.
Yeah, I think that's another part of your charm that I picked up on when I saw your tapes. It's almost like you're doing it to entertain yourself, and whether or not the audience is entertained really doesn't matter to you. But I know that that's not what it is. It is that you're on the spectrum, and so you have a different relationship to the audience in that way. But I mean, for me watching you perform, there's a charm to it that you don't need us, and yet you're so funny, so we need you. As your world started to expand with these online shows, tell me about your writing process, because like I said, when I watched that tape of you with the Plano Virtual Festival, and I remember that you did this with our show. How do you tackle customizing or throwing in little things into your set so that the audience would know, okay, well, obviously Juliana is not from, it's not from deep in the heart of Texas, and yet the way they're gonna create the connection to us is by mentioning something local or American. Is that something that you naturally do, or is that something that you thought, I'm gonna do this because that'll help me connect?
Yeah, I think for me, what I did was I actually remembered an advice by a fellow comedian. I mean, he's a couple of years older than me in comedy, and he mentioned about his experience performing in UK for a couple of months. But unfortunately, he kind of bombed. It's like nobody cares about him and all, and he's like bombing. And after a while, he relayed his experience to us, that saying that when he was talking to other comedians, they were like, dude, where are you from? That kind of stuff. And he said that, oh, I'm actually from Brunei, but then they were like, dude, why do you not mention in your act? Because we always think that you are from there, but the stuff that you talk about are pretty different from what we would hear in locally, So the thing is, I think it's important to address. I mean, his point is to address the immediate. That means if let's say you show, I mean, I'm not white, that kind of stuff, or either whatever. So it is obvious that people see that, okay, this is someone that is definitely not from this region, but where are they from? And the thing is, if they keep bothered, their mind is bothered with the question of where's this person from, who is she, where are they, whatever. They cannot focus on your joke. That means their mind will stay on the free Spain. Yeah, free Spain, where they are just thinking, where's this boy from? Where's this boy from? Where's this guy from? And whatever he said after that, nobody followed. And he said that's why he started telling his jokes about Brunei. I mean, as an opener, and I think that helps a lot in him getting the other jokes across. And I learned from him on that advice. So I did not need to suffer that same pitfall that he has.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think that is a very important thing, which is to address. Even it's good to address, like even myself, like some people say you can actually start off by addressing that you are on the spectrum, because the way I speak has a certain cadence that a neurotypical will find it interesting. Yeah. So it's a different kind of cadence from a neurotypical. So it's good to just address it at the beginning and move on. But again, in Malaysia, it is it's a soft spot. That means I cannot just do that immediately. I usually have to try to find, I'm still finding a good opening line that doesn't just start off with, I have autism, you know, that kind of stuff. Because in Malaysia, the understanding of autism is still very basic, where they just think that either you have autism or you don't. So I happen to look like the person who don't. So it is very hard to, like, people were like, I don't believe you, you know, that kind of stuff. Or either, no, I don't think, I mean, it's like they would think that you don't look autistic, you know, that kind of stuff. Or either they have a negative connotation on people on the spectrum to the point that they start thinking that you are 3 years old, you know, that kind of stuff. They start thinking that you are a kid when in fact you're not. So it becomes hard again when their mind is being fixated on what autism is. That's when it is quite hard to get them to move on. So the important thing is to, like, quickly break it into a joke and layer it with a couple of laughter first before you even reach the autism line. So at least they open their heart to you, and you can actually start saying stuff like that. If not, you can't, because they were like, okay, who are you to tell us that? I mean, and because their understanding is a bit basic on what autism is, and that's when they will shut down, and then you won't get any laughter after that.
Sure.
So it's good to layer up. So I'm also playing a bit with my physical appearance, because again, being queer is not that commonplace in Malaysia. So I will start off with a joke that only works in the national language, unfortunately. Yeah. So it is like, I will always say, okay, sometimes people ask me, are you a man or a woman? And then, but in Malay, that joke work because the word or is very quirky. So I would just say, oh, you know, that kind of stuff. The punchline is actually oh, but it sounds like that in Melayu. So maybe I can just do one joke, which is already been translated one line ahead. Yeah. So, kadang kala orang tanya I, Juliana, you ni lelaki atau perempuan? I jawab atau. So that word is quirky. So it works in only in that language. It doesn't work in Mandarin. It doesn't work in English. It only works in Malay. So that's how I actually do that as an icebreaker. At least it gets them to a quick laugh before I actually proceed to my other part of the jokes.
Okay. You have shared with us that you are on the spectrum, and now telling us that the understanding of autism in your home country is not as advanced as maybe in other parts of the world. Now I understand a little bit that you may have been motivated to create this show, The Walking
Sorry,
on
I have
Spectrum.
a special guest doc. Whoa, special guest.
Was your experience and the fact that you felt like you were on a campaign to educate others about autism, were those driving factors for creating your show?
Yeah, it is. I mean, partially for me, I felt that it is good to be able to. I want this to be a topic that is easily spoken. That means it's not like people cannot talk about it, because in Malaysia, mental health is pretty taboo still. Yeah, where people don't talk openly about depression, about whatever illness that they are suffering, ADHD. These are all pretty taboo, and then people quietly goes to the psychiatrist, and they never want people to know about them. You know, it's okay. It's akin to going to a plastic surgery. You know, like it's like we go there quietly, and then we come out quietly. We don't want to let people know what happens, and then we pretend to live a normal life, because as Asian, we usually want to portray just the positive facade of our life. We just want to show how good we are, how wealthy we are, but there is a lot of things that are being kept behind closed doors. Yeah, but for me is I want to be the person who does to do the unspoken, you know, like where people can't speak about it, I speak about it, because I'm comfortable with doing that. So I want to be the one who can speak about it.
Yeah.
And with that, I evoke conversations. I mean, I don't expect understanding in a short period of time, but at least conversations will help. Yeah.
Have you gotten any, because that it sounds like such a cultural thing to not address it, to consider it as a taboo. Have you gotten pushback? Have people been uncomfortable in you being so vocal about raising this raising the awareness of autism?
Yes, but most of the time, eventually it becomes favorable when you make it funny enough. Yeah,
Ah,
so if let's say you're just going up there and just saying, I mean, just telling facts like information, just telling them, okay, look, this is what autism is, you know, blah 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 blah. Then people will get like, you know, like, or either look, this is what being queer is. Then again, they will get like, you know. But when you tell it in the form of a joke, at least it get a bit more. It's kind of like the spoonful of sugar make the medicine go down.
yeah.
So that is. Yeah, spoonful, yes. I don't want to mix it up. Spoonful of medicine make the sugar go down. I think it will be funny. Yeah. So, so I'm like making sure that I'm not mixing up these two. Yeah. So the thing is to make it easier to talk about it, where it's more a palatable topic to talk about, palatable topic, rather than like, oh no, we can't talk about this, you know, because I think it is important to understand, because a lot of times people get upset or angry. It's not because of they are angry or what. It's just because of lack of understanding, and that's when a lot of misunderstanding can happen. A lot of things can be taken out of context. So it is good that we talk about it as the forerunner. And I think even myself, I actually felt that Malaysia is gaining, especially recently, we are gaining a bit more understanding of, and there are more people involved with working with people on the spectrum. So the awareness has been increasing lately compared to like the few years back where nobody talks about it and everyone is afraid of what this is, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have gotten your show premiered at I mean, Australia, New Zealand, and New York. So
Yep.
you're gaining audiences. What has the reaction outside of Malaysia been to your show?
I would say that it's good reaction because they wanted to. I mean, it is partially because of curiosity, because I'm kind of like from the other part of the world, so they also want to know like what's happening on the other side. But turns out that our experiences are pretty universal after all. You know, it's like we can be from very different parts of the world, but the experience that I feel and I think certain things that we experience as someone on the spectrum is not just exclusive to us. It could be also loosely translated to people who are neurotypical as well. It's like pretty relatable in certain ways. So it is like they were like pretty intrigued and they enjoy it, because I think I involved that is because for me, Walking on Spectrum is actually a medley show. It's not just a comedy hour like what is happening most of the time out there, where everyone is saying, I'm doing my 1 hour, you know, that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm very honest. I say that I'm not doing a whole comedy hour. I'm doing a medley show where it involves comedy, spoken word, and storytelling, which is something I did alongside with my comedy as well. I mean, for therapeutic reasons. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's good because there are a lot of other issues that I'm working on, but it is not stage ready for comedy yet. So it is better to pre-process by spoken word and storytelling for the time being until you found a better angle to bring it into comedy. So for me, when I do that, especially the storytelling part, where I talk about how I actually stand up and left my abusive family. Yeah. So that's when I think it's pretty harrowing an account. Yeah. So that's why that time they were like, for them, it's pretty refreshing for someone whom we just met for the first time on screen to talk about their issues so openly and just like no holds barred, and just talk about it without any like hold back, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's why for them they felt the truth is pretty refreshing. Yeah.
Yeah. Is part of that, and I will admit I do not have a solid understanding of how autism works when you are autistic. So I'm just curious that the way I think of an autism, a brain that is autistic is everything is very factual and linear, and there's not a lot of gray. So for you to be open, it's just the normal way for you to be. And we, you have a really good way of describing the neuro, what, oh, you've used,
Neurotypical.
yes, for neurotypical, we like to talk in nuance. We like to talk in between the black and the white, the extremes, the yes, the no. We like to talk in between there. But for someone that has autism, that they can't operate in that space. And so for us, it's actually refreshing to just know fact, not fact, truth, fiction, and not mess with the stuff in between. It's actually relaxing.
Yeah, actually that is very true, because for me is I don't know, I mean, I don't really, because my mind is programmed in such a way that I don't really I just take things on a very surface level. I mean, like, take it as face value usually. So it is actually pretty cool, because it's like there's not much of a, I mean that, like they said that people always say that people on the spectrum are usually pretty cool, because they just say what they mean, you know, like we just say what we mean. We don't really play mind games, you know, like I'm going to say something and confuse the hell out of the other person, you know.
Right.
And I expect you to read me, you know, that kind of stuff. But for people on the spectrum, we don't bother, because we are so tired reading people. We don't even know how to read, but we try, you know. So we just don't bother. It's like, you know, just get me what I want, you know, now, you know, that's all, you know, that's what we do. We just, we try to get the point across as much as we can, rather than to convoluted it and then make it confusing, and at the end everyone get misunderstand and isolated eventually.
What well, I mentioned in the introduction that you may be our first official poet to have been a guest. Is that something that you've always been, or is that something that you've fallen into in the last few years?
I think I officially followed. I mean, I used to write poetry when I was much younger as well, like just writing as a gift to people, like as birthday gift, you know, because I'm pretty. That's why I'm like, I don't really buy into commercial, you know, like you just go to the bookshop, buy a card, just say to so and so from me. Then after that, I just, it's for me, that's not the thing I do. I prefer handwritten stuff. So I will draw my own stuff. I mean, I know it's ugly, it's just a simple cake that I usually draw. And after I just say happy birthday, and then inside I would just write a couple of lines, and send it to the person. So they find that a very unique gift, you know. Like it's personal and all. And for me, I started from that, but eventually I drifted on, because, well, I mean, when work start, I mean, when you start studying college, there's so much of work and all that. Eventually, I just lose it. Like I just study hard, and then work hard, and I just kind of like abandoned that idea of writing poetry. But it kind of come back to me when I was doing stand-up comedy, actually, because at one point of time I've already reached a slump. I mean, I know that I'm only a baby in comedy, but I also have my slumps, you know. Like I think 1.5 years in, I actually thought of giving up comedy, because I felt that no matter, I mean, it is quite apparent, because a lot of my comedian friends, they are in comedy for a couple of months, but they actually pick up the nuance of stand-up comedy pretty quickly, while I'm still struggling with, and I was like bombing for a 1.5 year, you know, that kind of stuff. But the thing is, the funny thing is, I don't even know I bomb, you know. I just know that I know that I'm not getting anywhere, because I see all my friends, they are getting paid, they're getting booked on shows, and I'm not. I'm just doing the open mic every day, you know, like. And then so I kind of know that, not because I bombed, that I know that that to the audience. I know that because of other circumstances. So that's when I felt that, okay, great. That means because I'm unable to read the audience well, to connect with them, and also I'm unable to and then the thing is, I don't have much spontaneity compared to many other acts. So I thought that I think no matter how hard I work, I will never be as good as the rest, and it's a waste of time if I continue to do this, you know. So that time, that's when I suddenly turned my face to poetry for a short while, like oh no, I think I'm better as a poet. I'm better as a poet. Like, I'm not funny. Yeah, so I started, but there's this exercise that we were in, where because poetry, they also do quite a lot of writing stuff and all together. So they were like saying, okay, please, now we are going to write something, and then write something that matters to you. And also, good thing about poetry is you don't need to be funny, so you can just go head on and then you dive deep. And I think that's when I actually written my poem called Autumn, yeah, which is also featured in Walking on Spectrum as well. So that poem is about my life with autism, my relationship with autism. And I think from there, because of the deep dive that I managed to get in that time, that's when I also realized that actually some of the stuff in poetry, I can actually translate it to comedy. Yeah, so it's kind of like the setup, and then I just need to look the poetry is like the setup, and and I just need to look for the punchlines. And I think that the deep dive allows me to actually see that and when I do that, I actually kind of make a comeback in my comedy, through poetry. So it is kind of like a lifesaver that time, because I was really like, cool. So that's how I got back into poetry, and then I've been writing. Although I'm not as avid writer as many other people, but when I'm inspired, I usually write a few lines here and there, and just it's very therapeutic. In fact, I don't really, and then there are times we will get paid as a poet as well. But the thing is, that is usually always comes as a pleasant surprise to me, because I always do it for a therapeutic purpose. But of course, as Asian, I won't refuse money. Yeah. I won't refuse. But for me, I never meant poetry to be the main thing. It's always, for me, it's therapeutic, and it allows me to be real, and I don't need to joke around my circumstances if I'm not ready to. Yeah, I can just dive deep into poetry and storytelling. Storytelling is always the long form of poetry as well. So perhaps I think we are not just comedians, spoken word poet, or storyteller. We are just under the whole umbrella of storyteller. Yeah, where we tell our life just through different methods, but we are all storytellers.
Right. So what is next for Juliana? It sounds like you're going through another lockdown. So what is next for you?
What is next for me? I mean, of course, primarily is to continue solidifying my craft in stand-up comedy. Yeah, I mean, without the stage is fine, but I think I always say that stage work is also important. But then when there's no stage work, you always have an opportunity to work on your materials. Because you have a lot of time to write, you have a lot of time to edit, you have a lot of time to rehearse on your own. And with the virtual comedy, it's technically rehearsals every time. You're rehearsing on screen first before you even bring it to life. So I'm always open, I'm always ready when the floodgate opens. As the floodgate, when this COVID thing is really over, and floodgates are finally open again, then I will be ready to take whatever opportunities that come. So I look at this phase as a preparation. That means for me to sow my seed, and then to water the plants, this kind of stuff, rather than to be resentful about what is happening. Yes, of course, I was resentful at first, because you see, in Malaysia, we have a lot of reopening and shutting down and all. That means lockdown, and then we reopen, perform for a while, and then lockdown again, and then reopen again. I think, and then this is the third time we are having a lockdown in Malaysia. So we have been reopening and shutting down again and again. So it is very frustrating, because you are like, yes, I'm going to take all the charge and all, and that's when you're going back to square one again. But I don't want to view it as like devastation, because if not, the next 14 days of a total lockdown will be a complete hell. So I choose to say, let's take it as a preparation phase, like enjoy this time to do whatever that need to be done. Also, that is for the comedy side. But I would say for other things, I'm also studying acting. Yeah, I'm also taking the opportunity to study acting, because I love Korean dramas very much. Yes, I'm very happy when it comes to certain things in my life. I'm like, oh, it's like I wanted to be the guy in the show. I like that's why I say being non-binary is fun, because every time when people ask me like so why you like the Korean drama, I think that, oh, because I like the guy, but I also want to be the guy, the kind of stuff, like, because they are so stylish. Korean men are stylish. Okay, don't talk about the everyday men, but those on real are really like, they are really. I mean, for me, it's like these are all very good distraction. When you are upset or what, you just go there and see, and you'll be like, your mood is just instantly like boosted, And the thing is, you do get addicted to Korean drama. So the most sensible thing I did was to watch another Korean drama after that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I learned acting so that I can get at least understand what is the context of their acting and all. Just it's always good to understand what is behind the screen, you know, like what do they do to prepare themselves for their roles, and the acting techniques and all. It's always good to learn. And myself, I also like use the opportunity to read some books, and then like, because the thing is, I kind of wanted to make this the best period of my life, although it is hell, but I still want to make a paradise out of hell.
Sure.
So yeah.
Well, I certainly hope that our paths will cross. It sounds like once things reopen and we're past all this, you're going to be.
I would love to go to Texas.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm going to start wrapping up, and what I am doing with this summer vacation series of talking to guests from our online show or from around the world, it's going to be a little bit different when I ask you this question, because when I ask other Americans this question, it's very easy to make comparisons, but with you, it's not going to be, but let's give it a shot. Can you tell us why we should be checking out the Kuala Lumpurian or Malaysian comedy scene?
You should check the comedy scene in Kuala Lumpur, because there's a lot of up and coming talents that are pretty unseen of. I mean, what you have seen of me is just the tip of the iceberg. You have to see the rest of it, the rest of the comedy scene in Malaysia. And plus, Malaysia is a beautiful place. We have good food, good weather, and bad pilots. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, and then tell us some names specifically of who we should be checking out. And for our audiences who, you know, can't pick up your accent as fast as I'd like to think I have been, tell us the names slowly.
Okay, so you have to check this woman out. Her name is Shaq Munisamy. But don't worry, I will send you the name.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah. Good.
Because I'm Chinese, so my name is considerably easier. Yeah. Yes, considerably easier compared to the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next person that you should check out is a guy called Garu, Rumon. Yeah. He's not exactly Malaysian, but he's from Pakistan. No, later he will kill me. He's from Bangladesh. He's from Bangladesh, but based in northern Malaysia, Penang. Yeah. So both of them are great. Yeah. So check these two out for a start.
Okay. Yeah. Send when we finish, you'll send me their names so I can include.
And both of them have done Zoom comedy before. I mean, yeah, it's like it will be great that you can get hold of them for future virtual shows. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure that people know about you?
Okay, only one thing. Please follow my Instagram. Yeah, and MX Juliana Heng. Yeah, at MX Juliana Heng. Yes. MX is the kind of like the prefix for a non-binary person. So that's why I use it, MX Juliana Heng. Yeah.
Is that a global thing? That seems like that should be a global thing. That's a really smart idea.
But there is a lot of like they say the pronouns things and all is pretty. It's like your mind will just blow the moment you know like so many ways of saying something. Like there is a they, them, z, don't know what, like I get messed up even myself. Z, Z-E, you know, those kind of stuff. There is a lot of pronouns out there. But I think MX is pretty cool because it's very close to like Miss MS, MR. So I think I'm just changing it with X. So it's like they say woman and comedy, like WOMXN. Yeah, I think that is pretty cool. Yeah, rather than to just use the normal one. So I wanted to use this. Even my Instagram is educational. Yeah, where I use my handle. I educate using my handle.
Yeah, very smart. Okay. I am going to ask you my closing question. And are you ready?
Sure.
One word to describe your future.
Good question. Exploration.
I like it.
Yep.
For the record, I did not think your password of boring was right, but that's fine. It's your word. You chose it.
Yeah. I think that is the past because it does take me. I think what you see today is actually a journey I have since taken from boring. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so that's why disagreeing it is actually a good thing. I mean, it's meant to be because it's the past. I mean, your future has to be moving forward. It cannot be still boringer or either less boring, kind of, but it needs to be like, a different way of looking at it. It's like now we are shifting to a brave new world ahead. Yes.
Exploring that world. Fantastic. Okay, well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham Presents Juliana Heng. Tell us where we can find you. You can tell us the Instagram account. Sure. And also let us know of any projects that we should be checking out.
Sure. Okay. So Instagram, personal, @mxjulianaheng. And then I also run I Love KL, which is a curated comedy show that includes that I try to feature people who are hidden gems and unspoken voices within the comedy community where they are not mainstream, but they are great. So that will be @ILoveKL.
Okay. I think I have that.
Yay!
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Well, we hope you've enjoyed learning about how Juliana got to be the comedic genius that you heard today just as much as I have. This has been Comedy Wham Presents Juliana Heng. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you so much, Juliana.
Thank you so much, Valerie and Comedy Wham.